33, and I would like to call the meeting to order. Steve Meeker said that he would let me know today whether or not he could make it. He did not let me know, so the feeling he's on the 7th hole at a golf course. And we have two guests with us tonight. That would be Ed Blanchard, who has been our advisor for a long period of time, checking in from the Florida Keys, and Lauren Wright, who is our Veteran Service Officer for Hubbardston. So thank you both for joining us tonight.
You're welcome.
Okay, and what I would like to do is, first of all, we are going to follow the agenda, but I thought as a preliminary, because most of you have probably not met Lauren, that I would introduce her and have her give us a little bit of a background of how she is participating in supporting our Hubbardston veterans, along with her other responsibilities. But prior to that, I want to thank her for the research work that she did to help us prepare the list that we'll be going over this evening, trying to find records on our servicemen from so many years ago, especially if the names aren't spelled right or there's something missing, is indeed a challenge. So I'd like to once again thank Lauren for what she did for us, and she wanted very much to be part of our meeting, and also she'll be part of our Memorial Day services. So Lauren, if you would, tell us a little bit about what you're doing for the Hubbardston veterans now.
Sure, thanks, Bill. Hi, good evening, guys. My name is Lauren Wright. I'm the VSO, a retired October. The bulk of my work for the town of Hubbardston is going to be immediate claims. There's not a lot of clients in the town of Hubbardston that need Chapter 115, which is like a low-income subsidy for veterans. So I've been doing a lot of community engagement. We've been getting the Memorial Day Parade together. I've been present at the Senior Center for coffee hour. I have office hours every Monday from 4 to 6. And one of my first projects was doing some research into the remaining veterans that need to be added to the memorial. And I was happy to do that. They were interesting to read about. I found some of their records, and I wrote up as much as I could about the medals that they got, some of the work that they did while they served. So that was a good project. And thank you for inviting me to this meeting today.
Great. And as we know, since the 30th of May of last year, when we dedicated the memorial, many individuals have come forward indicating that they believe that they also were potentially eligible for being represented on the monument. In spite of all of the outreach work that we did via newspaper articles, YouTubes, Facebook, signage, and outreach by letters, et cetera, it's, I have tried to think about it as trying to put together your 50th high school reunion. People are all over the country, all over the place. Some have passed, and so there were bound to be some that slipped through the cracks. And now we've discovered that there are indeed many that slipped through the cracks, and I've been hunting them down and trying to establish their eligibility. In many cases, I'm doing it through relatives. And the people from town who have lived in town for a very long time, such as Martha Holderson, Betty Bumpus, Jane McCauley, have been extremely helpful in leading me in the right direction, and so I'm very thankful to them. So I have, as the second item on our agenda here, or the first item, is a plan of action to get the new names added in time for Memorial Day, which is the 29th of May, and not very far off. So I have before you, I sent it to you in the mail this afternoon around 3:30, because I was working on it until 3 o'clock, the updated list, which I have entitled Changes, Additions, and Modifications to our Vietnam Veterans Memorial. And I put it into 3 categories. One is a mistake, The second is modifications that need to be made, and the third are additions. The mistake somehow it got by the goalie. We have Charles Fox Jr. on the memorial, and he was 12 years old when the Vietnam War ended. So we have two other Fox veterans who are on the memorial, but we've completely identified that he is on there and he should not be. So we will be checking with the engraver, who is Bob Pearson from Leominster Memorials, to see if, without too much trouble, there's some way that we can eliminate that name. The family doesn't mind, they don't have objections, and for the most part, it'll go unnoticed, but it's not right. So the modifications are spelled out for you there. They're as simple as adding junior to one name, putting gold stars before the names of veterans who served in country, and one misspelling. And we're not sure if this can be changed, but if it can, we will do so. The most important part, and the one that is the most complex and has been a real challenge, is the now list of 17 eligible and one potentially eligible veteran. I have done my very best, and this is a combination of all the folks I've mentioned, including Lauren doing the research for me. I have in each case given an explanation of where I had the material or where I found the material. So if you look through those names, I am asking you as a committee to take the time to study those names, to look at those names, and at some point we need to do two things. And that is, we need to vote on, this is the list, this is the way it's going to be, and also to set a deadline, because this is kind of got to be one and done for more than one reason. One reason is it could go on forever, and number two, we have a finite amount of room on the memorial, which we will discuss in detail. So I'm going to ask you, if not tonight, because I have not given you enough time, before we have one more meeting, which we'll talk about, to look those names over for spelling, for middle initials, or anything you think you can find out that may be incorrect.
What would we be checking them against?
I have no idea. You can check them against phone listings online. That's what I've been doing. Or you may know somebody. I mean, as recently as yesterday, I talked with Richard H. Mahontig. I'm mispronouncing it. And the reason we missed him is his name was misspelled. It was M-O-N-O, and it's not spelled that way. Second page. It's M-N-O-H. So when I spoke with him, he was gracious and kind of wondered why his name wasn't on it. But once I verified for sure that he was eligible based on the fact that he served for 6 years, I added his name. Kenneth McLean was spelled differently, so I talked with him literally today, and once I realized his name was spelled wrong, I made the change, and he was in the Navy from 59 to 63. Remember, our points for the dates are November of 55 through May of 75. And it was this committee's input that we wanted to be all-inclusive, that we wanted to use the VA's definition of the Vietnam era period, which was a 20-year period. You find different dates if you look at different sources, but it was the VA that said, these are the dates we acknowledge as our being involved in Vietnam, so in the Vietnam era. So those are the list. As late as this afternoon, speaking with Betty Bumpus, I found that the one in red on the second page, which is George L. Richard, was Louis Richard's brother, and that I'm gonna check tomorrow with Rosemary, who is Louis Rich's daughter, because as far as I know, George passed away in 1959. He was born in 1938 and passed away in 1959. And according to Betty, she knew he was in the service, wasn't sure when, but the likelihood is that, based on the fact that he was 1 year older than her and born in 38, that he probably was in the service in the period that I've just identified. So that may be an 18th name. So we've come up with quite a few additional names, and why don't we stop there for a minute, and I will ask for your input, and any questions you have pertaining to the list.
I know that Gary Kangas's, George Kangas, that's correct for him.
Yeah.
Because he keeps telling me he's gonna be on it.
Yeah, and Gary
So-
approached me after the monument and said, "How about my brother George?"
Yeah,
And I said,
so that's
"Well, fill me
correct.
in." "Well, George was in the Coast Guard, does that count?"
Okay.
I said, "Of course it does." So that's how we found out about George.
What about the spelling of the next one, Richard? M-N?
That is correct. That is correct. That's why we missed him, because we had on the list that Lauren was researching, it was M-O-N-O. And literally, you're talking about Richard H., that name right there?
Yes.
Second page?
Yeah.
That's how it was spelled.
What nationality?
Monolithic, thank you for
That's the
pronouncing
way
it.
I've
I
heard
was
it
going
for-
monolithic,
Yeah,
so.
that's the way I've always, monolitny.
Mhm.
Yeah, I've heard that.
Yeah, so.
Wow.
So, and the second thing that we would talk about, and we can discuss it now, and that would be, would we be in agreement that we need to put a end date on it? And that is, for example, April 30th, 2023. Until that time, we would take more names, but after that, we could not guarantee that we can have the name put onto the memorial. That would be from a physical standpoint, that is, not having enough room, unless we decide to use the sides of the memorial. And we would post that on Facebook. I don't know how else we get it out to the public, because obviously we were not successful in reaching all of our folks. So, what do you think about establishing a deadline?
I don't think it will be helpful because we had an established deadline last year and it didn't, people were still responding. And I believe that after this year, we'll have more people responding.
You don't even know you can fit these names on, right?
We can fit them.
Oh, you can fit them?
We can. It won't be easy, but we can, right, Ed?
Well, I didn't hear Laura well enough to
Wake
understand.
up over there.
Yeah.
I said that establishing a deadline would be pointless because if somebody sees that they're missing or that someone they know is missing, they'll approach us.
And therefore, we should honor that. Okay? I'm okay with
Well,
that.
at some point, we have to, I know I'm only an advisor to the committee, but at some point, we have to draw the line and say, how much effort have we done? And, you know, with the monies we have left in the account, we can certainly get all the names we have as of April 30th on the monument, but, you know, if somebody comes down the road 3 years later and says, oh, I should have been on the monument, there's no more funding left to add names or whatever the committee wants to do, but it can't be an open-ended item, my thinking, can't be an open-ended item because this committee will eventually dismantle and the funds will be dispersed so that we won't have the ability to accommodate people in the long-term future.
Okay, that was our advisor. So, would you like to vote on that?
Sure.
Okay, so on the table is, we do not set a deadline for people to come forth and ask and provide certification that they are eligible to be put onto the monument. have to have a motion. I'm making that motion.
And if you do, what happens to that name that doesn't fit?
I think if the committee's dissolved, then we would give it to the town and let the town make a decision on that. I have discovered that there is a fund called the Honor Roll Fund, and that was something Betty Pompous told me about. And I will, as your chairman, look into that there was considerable amount of money available for maintenance, upkeep, repair for all the monuments in town. And I won't go any further on that until I talk with our administrator, but that account was active as of 2012. I have the account number and I have the amount that was in it. And if we can use that money, we'd have enough to put many, many more names on it and also take care of our monuments down the road in perpetuity. So, but, okay, motion's on. Somebody got, second that motion?
I'll second it, but
Okay.
I would like to discuss.
Okay, discussion?
We're saying that we're not gonna have a
Deadline.
A deadline.
That's correct. So that someone 3 years down the road comes and says, Uncle Joe was here in town and he was in the service. Here's evidence that he was in the service, DD 214 or a newspaper article or something that was in the minds and spirit of what we've been doing right along. That
I
we would-
understand, I just was, maybe wasn't listening to you, and that couldn't be that way.
Too many words, okay, okay.
Um,
So,
Yeah, I second the motion.
okay, all those in favor of not establishing a deadline? Okay, okay, so moved, no deadline, fine. So the second part of that was, do you choose, before we get into the money we have available, how we're gonna do it, and so on and so forth, do you choose to, as a committee, accept the list that I put forward to you with the 18 names, 17 of whom are definitely eligible, and the potential of that 18th name being eligible if I'm to find out that George Richard is also falls within the Vietnam era period? Do we choose as a committee to accept that list as a committee? Or would you like to defer until one more meeting, which could be 24th or 27th of April, May the 1st, and have the chance to look this over and be comfortable that you as a committee are prepared to sign off on it?
Definitely defer, because you've asked us to do some work on it, so I can't accept it tonight.
Mhm. And of course, I sent you an email about a week ago and with the list on it that Ed had prepared, which there's been some changes, so, okay. Any more input on that? Want to have one more chance to look it over?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay, great, okay, I'm comfortable with that, but at some point, we need to do a vote and move forward on that. You also had received a copy that Lauren had done back in December, but that's kind of the preliminary. I believe it's been refined. I believe it's to the point where I, as your chairperson, am comfortable with it, but I want you all to be comfortable with it. Because when somebody down the road says, how come I'm not on it, then we would say, well, as a committee, we did our very best, et cetera, et cetera. Okay? All right, let's move on. And that would be the placement of the names on the memorial. So I have sent out an email. I have also made up two, you're all familiar with the monument, obviously. But I made up 2 copies of the photo of the monument, front and back, so that you would have an idea of physically what it looks like. So if we have 18 names that we'll be adding, realizing that the letters, the font on the letters are 1 inch by 1 inch, and that the average name is between 10 and 17 letters, more like 13 or 14 average. We have to look at what we have physically on the monument where we can place those names. So I'm gonna run this by you. Visually, you know what the monument looks like. Physically, you have that in front of you, a couple of copies of it. So on the front, at the end of each column, we have 4.5 inches to the base. To put 2 names on, we need 3 inches. So forget about alpha, that's not gonna work. But we could theoretically put 2 names on each of the 4 columns on the front. We can add 2 names to each of the columns on the back. Okay, just keep these, this is all hypothetical and option-wise. Okay, we have 22 inches available to us on the back side, where we added some names before. We have 22 inches below those names going down to the base. We also have a space in between the original list and where the revised list was added. So theoretically, based on the input from our engraver, we could add 1 more name there. So the other physical space available is that the sides of the monument are 12 inches wide. And the names will take more than that, but theoretically, we could put them vertically. I personally do not want to reduce the font because that reduces the
It
positioning.
looks like we totally miscalculated the whole thing and just added names wherever.
No,
we
I
could.
would say we calculated it to the absolute
No,
best.
we did, but I mean, if to put them on the side, maybe.
Right,
Like we
yeah,
miscalculated
yeah.
everything.
And they're gonna pick that up because it's not alphabetical anymore, but
And no one wants to be on the
you
side.
pick out a monument that doesn't have some areas that needed revision, and I'll give you a gold star. So that is my best description of the space that is available for us to use. We will obviously take the input from our engraver, who is Bob Pearson from Leominster Monuments, and he is the one that was very involved in the engraving of the additional names. Cost. Okay,
Just a,
Bill?
on the front, you said that there was 4 columns, which there is, and then add, what, 2 names to each column?
theoretically, to the bottom of
Is
the
there gonna be a
column.
space between, or?
I can't hear people.
You can't hear? Okay.
Is there gonna be a space, or?
I can't hear people, no.
Can you hear me? Ed,
Yep.
can you hear me?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, we'll do our best to speak up. Lauren, are you catching most of it? Thank you. Okay, so there is 4.5 inches
Yeah,
at the
yeah.
bottom of each column.
There's just a space.
We can fit 2 more names.
Yeah.
2 names take 3 inches. The name takes an inch,
Yeah,
space an inch, second name takes an inch.
right.
We can do it. It's close.
No, what I'm asking is, for the columns that are already there, is there gonna be a space, like it doesn't belong on that list?
That's a very good point. I would say that I would recommend that we use another inch, which brings it to 4 inches. We have 4.5. And I posed this question to Ed, and I said, can the engraver get down horizontally? And actually, and he believes that that can be done. Because we're gonna be
Bottom
paying,
names are gonna be basically sitting on the platform.
yeah, and looking straight ahead as if he was, you know, on,
Let me offer this to the committee as your advisor. If we have 18 names, I think we can fit 15 in the space that we have left, which is 22.5 inches on the space we had provided for extra names. That means 3 names would have to be done elsewhere, and we certainly could do them alphabetically somewhere close to, let's say we took the 18 names alphabetically and the first 15 we print where we have space, and the other 3, which would be at the bottom of the alphabet, could go on the back side of the monument and be close to where they are alphabetic. I guess I would ask the committee this: if you're going to have another meeting toward the end of April. If you finalize a list tonight of those that we need to take care of, I'll in coordination with Bob Pearson and Leominster Monuments to ask him for his opinion on the best way to resolve most of the issues. The Charlie Fox, if we want to remove that, what it would look like if we did remove that. On the ones that need an additional star, that's a no-brainer. If we need on Toivo, because we spelled it wrong, does he think we can block out the 2 letters that are wrong and reverse them and get that in and have it look good? I'd like to counsel with him on that. And I guess I'd just like to get his, he's very knowledgeable and has done a lot of this, and I'd just like to get his
Okay.
on what he thinks our best resolution is, and then I could come back to the committee at the next meeting when we're gonna finalize all that and have a game plan so that he'd get it done for Memorial Day.
Because theoretically, 14 names can fit in that space below, because we have 22.5 inches, and 14 names will take up 21 inches. So the vast majority of the they will fit. We'll get the 18 on there. We're not gonna have much space left over, but do you agree that, Ed should get in touch with Bob, tell him we have theoretically 18 names, get the input from Leominster Monuments, and then come back to us at the next meeting or beforehand?
You know,
Bill?
just one point, that if he can remove Fox's name, if he puts any name in there, it won't be in the alphabet.
That is correct.
That will look totally out of place.
Yeah, and I don't know how you would get rid of a name and then
You
build
can't
up the
add another
space
one,
and
it's
then
gonna
add
be
one,
totally
so.
out of the alphabetical order
Yeah.
in there.
So theoretically, just removing the name and then doing your best to smooth it out and,
If I could make a comment about adding names.
My personal opinion on that
wait,
would
hold
be
on, Ed, hold on,
that
Ed, hold on.
yeah,
Um,
sure.
If you've ever been to the National, and you would notice on the far right, there's a big, huge panel. And they were all added after the original one was designated.
But they're not alphabetical on that list, right?
No, but
No,
they're-
not at the whole wall's not alphabetical.
No, it's chronological.
So,
It's
that was
chronological.
my point in the beginning, when you start adding and playing with it, alphabet is one thing, and then all of a sudden, now you're adding names all over the place, and it's all gonna, I'm just saying.
Yeah.
So, I know what you're saying, but it's not alphabetical at all.
Well,
Well, that
but
ship has
the
sailed.
point I'm making
I'm
at
just
the old
saying.
weight, we could if you're gonna put them on the side, in smaller letters, added after, because that's,
Memorial was dedicated.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's good.
added after the.
Right. If you're,
dedication.
you
We have room.
you can fit the 14 names on, and yet we're not making the deadline and people.
Putting them on the ends of the monument and vertically is not a great idea.
Yeah. Hold on, Dolores.
If we add these 14 names like we say, and there's no deadline, and people are gonna keep saying they had where are those names gonna go? We just gonna put them on there eventually, or shouldn't there be a deadline?
We'll let the next committee figure that out.
I mean,
No,
we
well,
voted
we're gonna
for-
have 18.
Tell me why we voted for no deadline.
Because imagine if you were somebody who had served, or someone, a relative of a loved one who had served, and you came before this committee or one like it 4 years from now, and we're told that, oh, you missed the deadline, so your loved one cannot be on this monument.
I'm sure there's names missing from all the monuments out there.
That's right, I mean, we're being very nice to do these 14 names at
Yeah,
this point.
18, yep, yeah, and that's true. But because our intent from the beginning was to be all-inclusive and to make
Right.
sure anybody and everybody who served our country got this as their welcome home.
You're right.
So, should that be the case, we still have room on the side, and we could theoretically, or someone could theoretically add to it, so. Ed, any more input on that?
Yeah, my only thoughts would be, if you take a look at the other four memorial monuments that we have that were put in place, I'm sure that even after those monuments were put in place, there might have been a, oh my goodness, but how about so-and-so? And, you know, my overall thought is, yes, wouldn't we love to include all? And haven't we done a significant job to do that? I think that, you know, once we finalize this and get the 18 names on, I'm not sure how much would come later on, but the committee probably won't even be in meeting anymore. But even if there was one later on and we could make an effort to get it on, I think we'd certainly try and do that. But I don't think we have to, after making such a significant effort originally, and now a second significant effort to make it all inclusive, that I think that if we had one or two names that dribbled on later on, we could try and address that. I don't know who they'd go to do it, but we could certainly try and address that and get those people on if we could. But at some point in time, you know, we just have to, you know, we're gonna be out of funds and the committee's not gonna be active anymore.
Good, okay, so that brings us to our next point, our budget. As of yesterday, we have remaining in our kitty $2,160.79. $2,160.79. That is available to us, that's our remaining in our account to do with as we see fit. You will recall the committee paid for the band last year, and we were very generous to take care of all the other monuments, restoration, et cetera, et cetera. So that's what we have remaining. So let's do some math. And that math is Leominster Monuments charges $185 as a setup fee. And they charge $6.50 per letter. So, and per, we'll say per symbol. So a star, junior JR would be 2 letters, and the gold star beforehand would be a symbol or a letter, and I'm presuming that that would be $6.50. Well, I did a little bit of adding up, and if we have the 18 names, and they become officially our list, I came up with 248 letters. That 248 letters at $6.50 per letter plus the $185 setup fee comes to $1,797. That's my quick tabulation, but that gives you perspective, so we know where we stand. So the good news is we do have enough to cover it. That's the good news. So it isn't a matter of running out of money, not having enough, not having to adjust what we plan on doing. So the good news, we still have the money and the ability to add these 18 veterans to our monument, do it right, and also we were notified by Leominster Monuments that if we provide them with a list by the 30th of April, they will be more than happy to get it done before Memorial Day. And then we will, of course, at Memorial Day, with Tom being our Master of Ceremonies, as part of his presentation, he will make mention of the fact that we have updated the monument, and please take time to go look at the monument to see that we have identified additional veterans and we have placed them as they deserve to be on our memorial. So,
Have we given
Bill,
a thought?
let me offer this. If the committee is willing to commit to the list and the changes and mistakes that you've shown tonight on your worksheet, I'm going to be back the 28th of April, and I could set up a meeting with Bob Peterson of Leominster Monuments right after that, and talk with him about the best way to do mistakes, changes, and also the 18 names. If you wanted to set a meeting shortly after the 30th, once everybody's all in with any information regarding new people, you know, I think if we had a meeting shortly after the 30th, we could have a solid game plan in place that would allow Leominster Monuments to execute it before Memorial Day.
Ed, I would say to that, that's a very generous offer, but I believe that if you were to present this hypothetical list with the 18 names to him earlier than that, if he can do so electronically or over the phone, to get his input
Yep,
even
I could
before
do
that. Before that. So he's gonna know that
Yep,
there are
I could.
18 names, he's gonna know, you could send him the list of names and say, not a definite, but a pretty definite. And if you could work with that and come up with that game plan beforehand, we could have that meeting earlier on and then have an answer for him.
But if you're not gonna close off the names till April 30th, how can you do that?
We're not gonna close the names off at all, Ed. We're gonna continue to collect names, which we do not believe is gonna result in much activity at all, but we voted that that is an open end. So I believe having those 18 names is gonna be a very accurate listing. So he would come up with a game plan and say, okay, I know the monument, you know, if you need me to give you the figures again as far as the measurements, more than happy to provide that, more than happy to sit in on a conference call, and that would be great if you could do it.
Well, my input to him was I told him what we were about to do, and he really wants to go out to the monument because he will make his pattern for the names when he's at the monument, so that the stencils he makes are ready to go, and then he just come back and blast it between April 30th and Memorial Day.
If it's okay with the committee, I'll be more than happy to meet him on the common when he comes and provide him with the insight that I have. Guys, all set with
No
that?
problem. After tonight's meeting, if you've got me the list, I can certainly get it to him immediately and ask him what his availability would be, and he can get back in touch with you, Bill.
It's in your email.
I don't think
You
so.
have
Okay.
it. You have it.
I'll send that to him if that's what the committee voted on.
Okay.
Well, it has to be made very clear that this is a draft list, so that he doesn't begin any stencil making yet until we can confirm everything at our meeting toward the end of the month.
Yep, makes sense
Thanks
that,
a lot.
yeah, that it's a draft, but, and subject to change and revision by you folks, as well as anybody else that gets in touch. I'm gonna update.
He didn't get what she said.
Yeah. Did you hear what Laura said?
Ed, can you hear my voice now, Ed?
He's frozen.
He's frozen.
He's frozen. Ed, are you there? Can you hear us?
Yep.
Okay.
Okay, am I speaking
Yeah, I
loudly
didn't know what
enough?
she said, but.
Am I speaking loudly enough now?
You know, if it's a draft list, we can always make changes, but he's gonna go out there on a given date, and that's gonna be ready to execute and engrave.
Yeah, but it
So
will
we
be,
have
my
some
conversation with him.
point in
will be
time
that.
when we have a cutoff and give him a list that's ready to go.
I think I'm pretty clear on that.
Okay, I just don't want this
Yeah,
guy to go
yeah,
off
yeah,
and running
I know,
because of a miscommunication.
Mhm, good. Okay. Those are the points that I wanted to make, and so I'm opening up the meeting now. Anything else that you'd like to cover that we feel that we haven't covered, that has come to your attention between our last meetings?
Yes.
I would, yeah. go
Can
ahead.
you verify the existence of an honor roll fund?
Yes. I'm gonna do that tomorrow.
Okay.
And I know that the question was asked within the last couple of years and there was no answer. So I'm gonna call Nathan in the morning, ask him if I can have 10 minutes of his time and provide him with all the details that I have, including the account number and the exact ledger figure as of June of 2012, and then put it in his hands and say, okay, just want to know where that money is, because it was designated for, in the 90s, but up through 2012, Betty is, I believe, the only person that's alive from the committee, but I will follow up on that. You can count on it. Tom?
Okay, Bill, I'm gonna have to leave the meeting. I've got another meeting that I have to go to at 7:30, but whatever the committee decides, and you shoot me an email that says this is the final list. I'll get in touch with Bob Pearson right away and give him that list and see if what time he might be able to come and meet you there and take a look at the list and finalize where the name should go. I'm not in favor of doing names on the side of the monument, though.
All right, Ed, thank you very much for your help.
All
Tom?
right, always
Goodbye.
good to see you guys.
Bye-bye.
Take care. Good night.
Good night now.
Our vote of not having a deadline is,
How do you feel about that?
well, you know, there are several people in town who are eligible to this, and they know about it, and they decided not to.
Mm-hmm.
So what happens when they?
6 of them, yeah.
What happens when they pass and they're,
But if there's no room
somebody
on it,
wants,
no room on it, what are you gonna do? They're gonna say, we should have built it bigger. There's always gonna be that possibility, and there's only so much room out there.
well, my view is that we either have to have now that I think about it a little bit, we either have to have a deadline, or we need to have an idea of what we're gonna do. And-
Tom, if you recall, it was you and Steve
Yeah,
that we had 6 individuals
right.
who were eligible, who elected not to have the name put on the monument. That between you and Steve, you reported back to the committee that we contacted those 6 people.
Right.
And of the 6, 2 of them changed their mind, and the other 4 said no.
Right.
Now, he's bringing up a point. Veteran passes. Grandson says, I found some paperwork that Grandpa was in the service during the Vietnam period. How come his name is not on the monument? That's what you're getting at.
Yeah.
Because
But if
did
we
the
don't
stone in
have
2022.
specific documentation that it was the choice of the veteran not to have their name put on the monument, then that's a dilemma. Now, when we reported back because of the secure issue regarding identification, we did not ask for those names, we did not record those names, so we do not have in our notes or in our minutes.
The law is written, in a lot of places, it uses the term reasonable. And if we could say, we reasonably did what we could do, we have a limited amount of space now. I don't know, whatever the excuse is, or they could come up in 100 years and say, I want my name on there now. There's names, I'm sure there's names missing on all those monuments, and, I mean,
Yeah.
reasonable is reasonable. I mean, we only have more space. I mean, sooner or later, you're gonna run out of room. Then what are you gonna tell the people? Add another stone? What are you gonna do? I mean, there's a limit, and it's called reasonable. And I think reasonable would fit this bill. We've done everything we can. We have a limited amount of space. If we shut Jerry Regan with that stone too much more, it's gonna look crappy.
And what
It's
if
gonna
you
look
start
names all
patterns,
over the place
that
and
engraving in where the
different
repairs have
spaces.
happened? What about then?
Okay. Yeah, I try to forget those repairs, but.
I mean,
yeah,
it's
we're-
all along the.
Yeah, but that would mean using the sides, and we're probably not
Yeah.
not going to have to do that.
He doesn't want to
Reasonable
use the sites.
rationalization is that we can fit these 18 names on. We will have a professional looking at that and providing us with a plan.
Yeah.
And then we'll decide if we want to accept that plan, and then we'll move forward, because that's our plan of
Without a
action.
date, then we say, okay, town, it's your ballgame.
I would
Do
say
what we
that
did
would be-
until we acted in your best interest, and we get, and if the problem
William,
down
that
the
would
road,
be
the
reasonable.
town's gonna have to deal with the cemeteries, right, forever. If there's a problem down there, they're gonna have to deal with it, not us, or not the people that are living right now. It's reasonable that we do what we could.
Okay. Other things we need to discuss? Opening it up to the committee.
Is there a reason why you didn't consider adding names on the tops of the columns?
Because that would really throw off the alpha, and you'd start with, why is a C before the A? You know, they're gonna figure it out at the bottom. But I did not make a measurement at the top because I thought that that would
Cause it
really-
would look stupid.
Okay, I'll go with that, yeah.
There's a limit to how much you can put on that
Yeah.
stone without looking
Yeah.
stupid. There, people are gonna ask why it's out of.
And we can explain that.
Yeah, and, well, yeah, no, I understand that, but when they're gonna look at it, some people are gonna say alphabetical order, not alphabetical order. You made it, before was the alphabetical order to find the names. Now, they're gonna be looking all over the stone for whatever name they plug in,
And let,
whatever
you know,
place.
and if you think that through, when a person goes to the Vietnam Memorial in Washington DC, initially they're confused, because they go,
But it's the
where's
date
the
of,
name?
it's the date of death or when they're on the stone.
Correct.
So,
So
but
they
they
have
have
to
reason
go to
for it,
the-
we don't have much of a reason for it.
no, we don't have the same reason, that's for
No,
sure,
we don't
but
the
they
same
have their reasons
That's
for
right,
doing it.
that's what
Yeah.
I said in the beginning.
Yeah.
We
But,
don't have much of a reason.
And I was amazed that on the day we dedicated the stone, 6 people came up to me and said, gee, maybe I should be on the stone. And when I made a presentation at the town meeting, 2 of those people were there. I spoke to them after, and yet a lot of it had to do with they were reserves. And they didn't think that they could
Same
be
thing with
eligible.
Ed.
But
Same
as long
thing
as
with
they
Ed.
had 1 day of active duty with honorable discharge, they're as eligible as the next person.
Are they in the list here of people,
Oh, yeah.
those people you're
Yeah,
talking about?
oh, yes, yeah. I won't
No, that's
name
fine.
them, but, yeah, but, I mean, one was a town official for a lot of years, and,
Yeah.
but, you know, they probably didn't think that they met the criteria.
Right.
And once I explained it to them, they said, oh, so I said, and most of them sent me information. When I turn in my files, you know, all the research data I have will be included in those files. And that will be a resource down the road. But it will not be a compendium. It will not have everything from A to Z. And if they can read some of my hieroglyphics, all well and good. No.
Before you finalize that list, we should check with Doc, maybe, just in case.
Well, it's up to you.
All right, I'll ask him.
Okay. I
He
have-
married his wife to say, if he's on the stone, he married his wife in the Air Force when he was in there, right, at the same time?
And you're telling me she was in the Air Force
Well,
at the same time?
wasn't she in the Air Force, they met while they were in the Air
I
Force?
have no idea.
I thought they were, I'll ask him.
Okay.
So regarding Charles Fox,
Yes.
if it comes to pass that there is nothing to do except to strike the name, that's something that you could talk to the engraver about, but would it be too strange to have, cause it's a sandblasted thing, so it's got some depth to it.
It does.
If he sandblasted a rectangle and then painted the entire thing out, would that be reasonable, or would that make like a big cavity on the memorial?
I'm thinking cavity.
Yeah, well, we can always defer to the professionalism of the engraver,
Correct.
because.
Good luck trying to match
They'll
the
have
stone
some.
there with that hole.
Mm.
Yeah, and of course, that would get back to
We had an awful
Lugaro.
time just with the chips
Yeah,
trying to
with the
match,
piers.
get it, so,
Yeah.
and you still noticed it. You can
Mhm.
still notice it if you really.
Yeah, and like I say, the family isn't, they're not mad about it, they just said, how did it happen? I said, I have no idea, because that was the way I was brought up, is that you don't try to, you say, I don't have an explanation.
You could make it like a tattoo and put a dagger on and hide his name under the dagger.
Yeah. Or after somebody gets divorced, they try to get rid of names.
You better leave the name there
Yeah.
untouched,
Probably.
Yeah, that's probably.
Yeah.
because any change is gonna look funny.
I tend to concur with the professional So, all right, any other things that we have to cover? Okay,
My last thing is, thank you very much for taking all of this on. This is a lot more work than you signed up for, and it's very frustrating clearly for you, but I'm very grateful that you're doing it.
thank you.
Yes.
Yeah, I appreciate it, yeah. Well, I'm glad I could do it, and just getting back from the Pacific, traveling 22,000 miles,
Oh, my.
13 time zones, and,
Uh-oh.
but it's kind of my fault.
You could have taken.
I could have taken you with me, but I told you I had an overweight bag as it was.
Oh,
So, all right,
ouch. You
it's
shouldn't
now
talk about your wife like that.
7:24, and we will adjourn the meeting. Thank you all for coming.
Okay.
And you guys can get to your Lions Club meeting, should you choose to.